right, welcome back. This is Jeff Heggie. Thank you for being with me. I'm excited today. I've got Ryan Gottfredson with me. He is the author of Success Mindsets, and it is a book that I really encourage you all to get. I have just absorbed it during the last week, and I am sold. It is a great book. He's put so much time and effort and research into this. And as you know, with listening to my previous episodes, I've talked a lot about mindset. This is really taking things to another level. And so thank you, Ryan, for being with me. Excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. So I'm a leadership professor at Cal State Fullerton. To be honest with you, I didn't know anything about Cal State Fullerton even when I applied to Cal State Fullerton, but we are now the second largest business school in the country, which is great because it provides me the opportunity to really develop a niche in terms of the research and the teaching that I do, which all focuses on developing ourselves as people and as leaders, primarily through a focus on mindsets. And so while I do that in an academic standpoint, I also do that I try to bring that to organizations and help them develop their leaders primarily through a focus on mindsets.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And let's get right into this. So I want to talk about what you teach in the book, the research that you've done and the things you've gone through. And I want to put it in the perspective of both our everyday life, the business aspects of it. And I love that you have an athletic background and you talk about athletics throughout the book, because with my Confident Athlete program, I've already, in our group coaching call this past week, I already told them that we were having this conversation and I couldn't wait to share it with them. So we'll add the athletic part into it as well. But one of the things, I love how you start the book, is you're thinking the best way to think. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the thing about mindsets that is really interesting is our mindsets. One of the ways that we could describe them is that they are our mental lenses that shape how we see the world. And how we see the world shapes how we think, how we learn, and how we behave. But most of the time, our mindsets exist and operate below the level of our consciousness. So, for example, two different people can see something like failure in two different ways, right? One person can see failure as something, it says something about them that they are a failure, but another person can see and interpret failure as perhaps maybe the best opportunity to learn and grow. And how they see failure then, of course, will shape how they think, how they learn, and how they behave in the face of failure. And so for most of us, we're not conscious of our mindsets. But there's a huge amount of power is if we could put labels on mindsets, know what mindsets are out there, then we could start to introspect and evaluate the quality of our foundational mindsets. And so that's really what my book, Success Mindsets, is all about, is helping people awaken to a part of themselves that they're probably been not conscious of. And once we awaken them to mindsets, then they become empowered to do something about them. At least that's been my personal experience with my own shifts in mindsets.
Right. And as we get going through this, I'm going to tell you about an assessment that he has that is so powerful to take this assessment and really understand your own mindsets. Because as he said, you're not always aware of it, of what your mindsets are towards certain things. And, specifically when we talk the inward mindset, the outward mindset, that was an eye opener for myself, because as I reflected on some of the questions, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's not so good.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly. But, one of the things, you say it in your book, Carol Dweck says it in her book, the nice thing about mindsets is there are thoughts. We can change our thoughts. We can change our mindsets. And, in going through some of this stuff, I look at it as we can become better people. And what I really like, you've already said it, our mindsets control our thinking, our learning, and our behavior. And what Ryan does throughout his book is he talks about each mindset, how they impact those, and then how that impacts success in our life, work, and leadership. So one thing you said in there that had me thinking right off the bat is you talked about our mindsets being a filter. Now, what I also like, you get into the scientific part of the mindsets. Like, it's not just theory, or you know what you're talking about. So this is great stuff. Compare, and now this is a question I have. Compare mindsets and our reticular activating system. Like, how are they related, or are they related?
Yeah. So I describe mindsets as being our mental lenses. And I think that that's a decent way of describing them. But to go deeper is, in reality, our mindsets are specific neural connections in our brain that span across our three major brain regions: our reptilian brain, our mammalian brain, and our human brain. Now, most of our neural connections in our brain are housed in one of these regions, but we have a small amount of mindsets that span across these three major brain regions. And these neural connections that span across the three major brain regions are effectively our mindsets. What they do is, these are the super highways in our brain that sends information and allows us, back and forth across these different brain regions. And it becomes our mental fuel filter. So in particular, our mindsets play three specific jobs at a neurological level. So the first job that they play is our body is sending our brain way more signals than we could cognitively process. So the first job of our mindsets is to filter in the most important information. And this is housed largely in the reptilian brain. Then once that information comes in, then we need to interpret it. And this occurs largely in the mammalian brain, where we tap into our implicit memories to make meaning of a situation, such as, for example, a clown, right? If your childhood experiences with the clown revolve around watching the movie It, you're probably going to have a different reaction to seeing a picture of a clown than somebody who grew up going to rodeos and seeing rodeo clowns, for example, right? So when that's the second step of our mindsets, is to interpret these cues that are filtered into our brain. Then, based upon the cues brought in and how they are interpreted, we activate different elements about ourselves to best navigate that situation. So, for example, if we see a clown as being scary, our palms are probably going to get a little bit sweaty. Our heartbeat is going to pick up a little bit. But if we interpret a clown as being something that's funny, then we aren't going to have those same reactions. Our body is going to respond to that situation in a very different way. So, in saying this, hopefully you can get the sense of a couple of things. One, that our mindsets largely do operate below the level of our consciousness. But two, they really are the most foundational aspect for why we do what we do. And so if we want to elevate who we are or improve who we are, we're going to get the most bang for our buck if we focus on the root or the foundation of who we are, and that's our mindsets.
Awesome. Okay, so you tell me, what's the best way to proceed in this? Do we want to get right into the individual mindsets and talk about the different aspects of it, or what's the best way to have this discussion going forward?
Yeah, I think so. Just a little preface is where I'm coming from, and you mentioned this earlier, is when you focus on mindsets, what you're doing is you're focusing on improving your being. So I think a lot of personal development efforts focus on your doings. What do you need to do to be more effective? And not that that's unimportant, but to me, it feels more shallow than focusing on our being. And so I love focusing on mindsets because we get to tap into our being. And when I realized this connection between our mindsets and our being, it led me to wonder what mindsets are out there and what mindsets do I need to have. And what I did, being kind of a researcher and academic, is I opened up the floodgates in academic research to identify what mindsets have been researched and what mindsets do I need to be aware of. And what I found is that there's 4 different sets of mindsets. that have been researched across psychology, education, management, and marketing. And these mindsets have been studied for 30 plus years across these different disciplines, but the research largely hasn't talked to each other. And so what I've done, and for my book and in the work that I do, is I've brought these 4 different mindset sets together into a single framework that allows us to get a broad but deep understanding of the quality of our current mindsets. And so I think maybe, the direction that we go is walk through each of these different sets of mindsets. Let's put labels to them. Let's describe them, because once we put labels to them and describe them, then what we're doing is we're empowering people to introspect about the quality of their mindsets. So that's maybe the direction we can go.
Perfect. And, in these 4 sets, what we need to recognize as well is they go from one side of being on the negative to the positive. And so as we're working on these and recognizing our own mindsets, that's what we're trying to do, is make that shift on what do we need to do in our lives to become more on the positive of each of these mindsets. So
yeah, great point. Let me just chime in, because it's probably something I should have said is the thing that was unique to me as I was trying to learn what mindsets are out there is that each of these different sets of mindsets that have been studied, they do exist, as you mentioned, on a continuum. It's not like I love the labels. It's the labels that I use, negative versus positive. And not that if you have a negative mindset, that makes you a negative person per se. But what research has found repeatedly over the last 30 years is that there is a mindset along this continuum that leads to less positive results. And there's another mindset, a more positive mindset, that leads to more positive results. And so across each of these 4 different sets, it is that continuum from negative to positive. And our mindsets are going to fall somewhere along that range from negative to positive. And if we can identify where we're currently at on that continuum and identify where we want to shift moving forward, then we've got some clarity in terms of our developmental focus.
Right. And just to go, I've got 17 pages of notes in front of me from your book. It's awesome. So just to add from your wording in the book, as we take each to be more positive, it effectively is going to improve our thinking, learning, and behavior. And by doing so, enhance our success in life, work, and leadership.
Yep.
And so that's why we're trying to move towards the positive on each one. So let's start with the one I've talked a lot about in my episodes and in my courses, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset.
Yeah. So a fixed mindset is more on the negative side of the continuum. The growth mindset is more on the positive side. And when somebody has a fixed mindset, they see themselves and others as being unable to change their talents, abilities, and intelligence. And, to them, it's, I am who I am, and there's nothing you can do about it. Who I am now is the same person I was 5 years ago, and who I'm going to be 5 years from now is the same person I am now. Somebody with the growth mindset, they've got a different mentality. They kind of think who I am now is only a shadow of who I'm going to be in the future. And this implicit belief around our ability to change our talents, abilities, and intelligence plays a really significant role in terms of how we operate. Because if we don't believe that we can change our talents, abilities, and intelligence, we got this fixed mindset, we have a tendency to see the world in terms of haves and have-nots. Like I either, if I fail, this means that I'm a have-not and I can't become a have. And if I don't succeed quickly at something new, this means I don't have what it takes to ever be successful in this area. Whereas somebody with the growth mindset, if they fail at something, this doesn't mean that they're a have-not. It just means that maybe they're a have-not now, but it doesn't preclude them from being a have in the future. And so what often happens is that those with the fixed mindset, their wiring in their mind is focused on avoiding failure, or the flip side of that, which is looking good. They always want to present themselves in a positive light. Those are the growth mindset. They don't mind failing. They don't mind looking dumb on occasion, because it's in those instances that they know that they're going to learn and grow the most. And so that's maybe some of the high level differences between fixed and growth mindset. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So this is one of the disturbing parts to me. Where do we develop our fixed and growth mindsets?
Yeah. So at its root, it has to do with a connection to the importance of looking good. So, for example, and research has found this, is how we were complimented as children helped to shape our mindset. So, for example, if a child is complimented by labels like "you are so smart," "you are so funny," "you are so pretty," that actually activates and strengthens the fixed mindset neural connections in our brain, that we always need to look or appear in this certain way. But children who are complimented not by labels, but by their effort, such as, "Oh, I loved how much effort you put in on this. You worked really hard." When children are complimented in that way, they're more inclined to develop a growth mindset. So that's one example of how our mindsets can be shaped, is in terms of how we're complimented. But maybe we had an instance where we tried something new and we completely flopped and we were really embarrassed. Everybody laughed at us. Well, that might be a little bit of a traumatic experience for us. And moving forward, we've learned that we want to protect ourselves from not being embarrassed again. And while that's justifiable, it is also at that same time limiting. Can you see that connection?
Yes, absolutely. And the reason I say this was disturbing to me is because so much of how we talk to our children, where you think you're praising them and saying, "Oh, good job, you're so smart." I had no idea I was instilling a fixed mindset in them by the praise I was giving them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's important. And that's, even I've talked a lot about it with my athletes. I started coaching my daughter in basketball when she was quite young, and I had the opportunity to coach her all the way through her senior year. And I've told her the same thing. If I knew back then when we started, what I know now, it would have been different for both of us. I would have been a better coach. You would have been a better athlete, because there were things that I was doing that I was instilling a fixed mindset in you because I didn't know any better. And so I think that's why it's so powerful to educate ourselves on these and to understand the difference between them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me give you an example of how I've seen this play out with athletes. So I grew up playing basketball, was kind of my favorite sport that I played. And when you play basketball, you've got your dominant hand that you typically shoot with. So I'm right-handed, but it's essential in your development of playing basketball that you learn how to shoot with your left hand as well, at least for layups, right? Is you got to be able to do a right-handed layup and a left-handed layup. And it allows you to be more versatile when you have that ability to do that. Well, what I see is there kind of comes a stage in the development where athletes using your left hand or your non-dominant hand is really awkward. I mean, it feels awkward, it looks awkward, and you're much less likely to make a basket when you do that. And so some children in a game setting, they're reluctant to use their non-dominant hand because they're fearful of missing a shot or of looking awkward or of looking bad. And if a player has that type of a fixed mindset mentality, that inhibits their growth and development. The children who grow and develop the most in athletics are those who are willing, even when the game is on the line, to try something new or to try something different, because even if they look awkward, they know that that's the only way that they're going to get to a point where they're comfortable using their non-dominant hand in a game. So it's interesting to see how that dynamic even pops up with kids at a fairly young age, and not only adults as well.
Well, you know what? That's funny. That brought up a memory to me from, it had to have been 30 years ago. I missed a wide open left-handed layup. And I still remember the guy on the top row who yelled at me. He's passed away now. And I still remember this guy yelling at me for missing this layup. And I'm sure I made sure I was cutting over and doing right-hand layups the rest of the season.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely. So what are the things we need to do to focus on developing a growth mindset? Because, you know, if we've got a fixed mindset, it's harder for us to say, I can change. I can move to a growth mindset. So how do we make that shift?
Yeah. And it's, I think that there's a variety of different things that we can do. So I think one of the first places we need to start is learning more about these mindsets. So because the more that we know, the more we can become aware of it ourselves, and the more conscious we can become of ourselves in a moment. So there's times I think I'm dominantly more of a growth mindset person. I didn't used to always be that way. But even now now I'm more conscious of times when I may kind of may have more of a fixed mindset. So I think knowledge is power. So learning more about them is really helpful. I think setting up little tests to try things out, right? So if it's trying to take on new things and go from being not very good at them to putting forth time and effort to being good at them, or even just recalling instances in which you did that. When was the time where you did something where you didn't succeed early on, but later became an expert in that, right? What we're doing is when we think about those things or journal about those types of things, is we activate our growth mindset neural connections. I mean, we've all got in our mind a growth mindset neural connection and a fixed mindset neural connection. The one that we use most dominantly to process information is the one that is stronger than the other. Because when one is stronger than the other, it fires more readily and more rapidly. And so if we want to develop more of a growth mindset, effectively, we've got to hit the gym for our mindsets. We've got to strengthen our growth mindset neural connections. You can't go to the gym once and expect to be strong. How we become strong is we go to the gym. You know, we don't need to spend 10 hours at the gym every day, but if we spend a half an hour at the gym every day over the course of 2-3 months, we're going to start to look very different than what we had before. And the same thing goes with our mindset. So it's just engaging in small repeated interventions that are activating these growth mindset neural connections.
Okay. And, you know, becoming more educated on them. Number one, success mindsets. I'm going to have the link in my show notes. Just click on that and make sure you order it. It's an incredible book. You know, one of the things in the book that I thought was a great quote, you said, cultivating a growth mindset could be the single most important thing you ever do to help you achieve success. That's how important this is. So,
yeah. And the reason why is because those with a fixed mindset have a really hard time approaching challenges and trying things that they are unsure that they will be successful at. And the only way that we are going to get from where we are now to a higher level of success is by trying new things and doing things differently, getting outside of our comfort zone. And having a growth mindset is necessary for us to cognitively and emotionally get there.
Excellent. All right. Now let's talk. So again, we're going to share some information with you where you can go through one of Ryan's assessments to understand where you are at with each of your mindsets. And this one is one that was a slap in my face. Let's talk about open and closed mindsets.
Gotcha. Yeah. So a closed mindset is when we're closed to the ideas and suggestions of others, and an open mindset is when we're open to others' ideas and suggestions. And I think an analogy that I like to use is, how do we see, if our mind is a bucket, how do we see our bucket? Because if we see our bucket as full, we believe that what we know is best. What happens if we try to pour something into a full bucket? Well, nothing gets absorbed. It just runs off the side. So a closed mindset is when we believe that what we know is best, and we see our mind as being this full bucket. An open mindset, on the other hand, is we may have a lot in our bucket. We may know a lot, but we are consciously leaving room for the idea that we could be wrong. And when we leave that room for the idea that we could be wrong, when we pour something into that bucket, we're able to take it in and absorb it. And so to me, how this plays out is that those with a closed mindset, they become focused on being right or being seen as right. Those with an open mindset, they're not focused on being right. They're focused on finding truth and thinking optimally. And the only way we can get there is if we foundationally believe that we could potentially be wrong.
So because I'm dad and I said so isn't very open.
That's kind of the epitome, right, of a closed mindset there.
And one thing I loved that you said in the book, why is it so difficult for someone that's closed-minded to become more open-minded?
Well, it's tricky because I don't think that there's anybody who's closed-minded who thinks that they're closed-minded. That's the challenge. Is I think everybody feels like they're open-minded, and so this is one that I think is really tricky to be self-aware about. And in fact, one of the things that I've gotten into a little bit more since writing the book is a concept that is, I think, overlapping with this idea of open and closed mindset. But the concept is intellectual humility. And if anybody is interested in diving into that, there's a guy named Shane Snow. And if you were to Google Shane Snow and intellectual humility, he's got a great little self-assessment just on intellectual humility. And what was interesting to me and how it compares to my mindset assessment is kind of, I saw myself as having an open mindset. And I took this intellectual humility assessment, and he looks at 4 different dimensions of intellectual humility. Well, I was really good with 3 of those dimensions, but there was one that I really struggled with. So if anybody wants to kind of dive deeper into it, I think that's a really good resource.
It's actually on my notes in front of me here. I had in big highlights. When we are closed-minded, it's difficult to see how we can be open-minded because we already think we are. So yeah, exactly what you said.
Yep.
So again, I guess the first thing is to recognize that you are closed-minded, figuring that out, and then we'll talk about your assessment and doing that. But what are the things that we need to do to become open-minded? And let's talk about why we need to do that, how it helps us either as an entrepreneur, as athletes, parents, whatever we're doing.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think it's helpful to use the bucket metaphor and just kind of investigate how full is my bucket, and am I leaving room for the idea that I'm wrong? So I think that that's really helpful. I think one of the reasons, or one of the places where people become closed-minded is in areas where there's tension between safety and truth. So, I mean, if we were to even go back 50 years or so to the civil rights movement, is there, of course, African Americans are trying to promote racial fairness in our country, really in the world. And while that, in a way, I think I see them as being seekers of truth. But also at the same time, they are getting a lot of resistance from the majority population, essentially whites, right? And because what the Black civil rights movement was partially doing was making whites feel unsafe, right? Their world is going, if they open up, equal liberties for everybody, well, my life as a white person is going to be different than what it used to be. And so the people who are the most ardent against the civil rights movement were the ones that were probably wanting to be, as they were being protective of the life as they knew it. And so I think that that's commonly why people become closed-minded, is because they are protective about something. That could be about politics, that could be about religion, that could be about just simply the way in which we go about doing something. And so one of the things that's helpful to me to think about is there are surely certain things that we need to take a stand on. We can always have a stiff back. The key to having an open mindset is to have a soft front. So even if we take a stand, we still have got to be willing to take in the ideas and suggestions of others and validate them. And if we're not, that's where we're being closed-minded. So it's not about the stands that we take, it's about how soft our front is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you on that. So how does this, just trying to think how we put this because as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm also sharing this with all my athletes in the Confident Athlete program. How do we take this into perspective of athletics, into a team environment? I guess what are we protecting there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, of course, it's about, part of this is about teachability and your willingness to be coached. And again, it's not as if you always have to run with the ideas and suggestions of others, but are you at least willing to take those in and kind of sit with them, validate them, and go from there? So I think the athletes who have a tendency to have more of this closed mindset, they believe that what they know is best. What they're doing is they're putting a cap on how much they could learn, grow, and develop. And I think most athletes, there's certain people that they're willing to listen to, and there's other people that they're not willing to listen to. And I think what we've got to do is we've got to develop the cognitive and emotional sophistication to be okay receiving feedback and coaching from anybody, regardless of who they are, because every piece of feedback or even constructive criticism contains valuable information. And if we could treat it as such, then I think we can unlock more of our potential.
It's interesting you're talking about that, and it made me think of a situation last night. I was coaching a basketball practice, and one of the players, his opinion was that I was wrong. He had the better way of doing it, which he was closed-minded to what I was doing. But on the flip side, as soon as he started arguing with me on it, I was very closed-minded to him as well. Yeah. And I didn't realize it until just now when you were talking about that. And I think I've seen it a lot as a basketball coach. There's a lot of times that, especially, it's usually the better athletes, the talented athletes, that will be more closed-minded because they know better.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And so we've got to get to this cognitive and emotional space where we are okay, whether we're a coach or a player, with admitting that maybe we made a mistake. Right. And if we can't ever get to that place, what we're inhibiting is psychological safety. And if there's not psychological safety, we're not getting the most out of who we are as a player or our team if we happen to be a coach.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. And that is, as I mentioned right from the beginning, after doing the assessment, that is something I know that is an area that I need to work on. And so I will be. Now let's talk about prevention and promotion mindset.
Yeah. So at a high level, a prevention mindset is when we're focused on not losing, right? You hear about prevention defense in football is we're focused not on stopping them from gaining yards, but from stopping them from scoring. But then a promotion mindset is when we're focused on winning and gains. And I think one of the best ways to describe this is to imagine that we're a ship captain in the middle of the ocean. And if we're a ship captain with a prevention mindset, our number one focus is on not sinking. So we don't want any problems to occur. We don't want to take any risks. We don't want to rock the boat. But, and I guess maybe I'll ask you is, if we're this leader or the ship captain in the middle of the ocean with a prevention mindset, and we don't want to sink, and a storm comes on the horizon, what is going to be our natural reaction to that storm? What would you say?
Probably to retreat.
Right? To run from the storm, go to a place of safety, because that storm is threatening our ability to stay afloat. But then we've got to ask ourselves, is the place of safety that we go to, maybe it's a harbor, is that the place that we originally set out for? Unlikely, right?
Right.
So those with the promotion mindset, it's not that they're not concerned about sinking. Of course, they don't want to sink, but their number one focus is on a destination and making progress towards it. And so when that storm comes on the horizon, they don't instinctively run from it. They ask themselves, does that stand between me and where I want to go? And if the answer is yes, then they prepare to take on the storm. They batten down the hatches and they muster up the courage to brave the winds and the currents associated with that storm, because that's the only way that they're going to get to their destination. So those with the promotion mindset, they're willing to deal with problems and risks along their journey. Those with the prevention mindset are more focused on maintaining their safety, comfort, and security.
And for those that are listening, again, just taken right out of the book, looking at which are you, and I like the way that you put this, Ryan. It says, are you a passenger, prevention, or a driver, promotion in your life? Do you prioritize what's on your schedule, prevention, or do you schedule your priorities, promotion? Are you a product of your environment, prevention, or the creation of your own proactive design, promotion? Do you seek to do what is easy and comfortable, prevention, or do you seek to fulfill a purpose, promotion? And I think, really, as you get to understand this more, it's really as we focus more and more on the promotion, it's developing that courage to know that if we want to do those big things that we have goals of, we've got to develop this mindset.
Yeah, I think for most of and I talk about this in my book, I think for most of my adult life, I had a prevention mindset. And I think the primary reason why is because I kind of learned that life is difficult, right? And if I could just survive, then that's a win in my book. That was kind of my mentality. And so I would wake up every day without necessarily having any certain goals and directions. Yeah, I had things to do, but my job with the prevention mindset was essentially, how do I get through today in the most enjoyable way possible? Like, that's the way that I thought about life. And while it's not a terrible way to view life, it was limiting because I was unwilling to push myself, right? If I want to have an enjoyable day, well, that means that I'm probably not going to be working my butt off towards some certain goal, right? Because part of reaching our goals is doing the dirty work, doing stuff that sucks, but it's necessary to get where we want to go. And so one of the things that really helped me out was a book here. It's called The 5-Minute Journal, which I was given. And every day it invites me to answer the question, what would make today great? And what are 3 amazing things that happened today? And as I started doing this 5-minute journal on a daily basis, just by answering those questions, it was activating and strengthening my promotion mindset neural connections. And I became less and less focused on how do I enjoy today to how do I make the most of today? How do I make this week better than last week? How do I make this month better than last month? How do I make this year better than last year? And so for me, the 5-minute journal was key to helping me. But I think at a foundational level, if we want to have a promotion mindset, we've got to have two things. We've got to have a clear destination, and we've got to have a strong why or purpose for getting there. Because without that why, when those storms pop up in the sea, we may be inclined to kind of give up and go to a safe harbor. It's only when we have this strong why or strong purpose that we're willing to brave the winds and the storms that are going to come along our journey from where we're at to our destination or where we want to go.
That's awesome. And that's one thing in the book as well. Ryan shares so many resources, the 5-minute journal, he's got books in there and everything that you can reference. Great stuff in there. So thank you for that. You know, as you talked about the ships and using them as an example, one of the things that reminded me of, because it ties into this so well, and this is going back, I don't know, almost a century, Earl Nightingale talking about in The Strangest Secret, you know, putting a ship in the harbor, one without a rudder, is it going to get where it's going? Absolutely not. And ship with a rudder, it knows where it's going, and it's got the captain and all those things. And that's what this reminded me of. Exactly what you said is, if you have a strong and clear purpose or destination, then you're going to know where you need to go. And that's what you need to do to have this mindset.
Yep, for sure.
Awesome. All right. So I guess let's go from there. And how do we apply this, whether it's to business, parenting, sports, and make sure that we're putting this into our lives?
Yeah, you know what you're having to do if you're making a shift from a prevention mindset to a promotion mindset is you're having to be more intentional, right? You've got a destination. So as a student, what is my goal? What am I shooting towards? As a parent raising children, what do I want to create with my children? What experiences do I want to give them? What knowledge do I want to bestow upon them? And it's then being intentional about delivering upon that. And so to me, that's intentionality and a promotion mindset go hand in hand. We can't be promotion minded without being intentional, and we can't be intentional without being promotion minded. So I think that's the key, is figuring out, okay, the different hats that we wear, where are we headed? What's our destination? And what do we need to be intentional about in order to get from wherever we currently are to where we want to go?
Excellent. Okay. Awesome. I love this. Now let's move on to what we do in traffic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about an outward and an inward mindset.
Yeah. I like talking about traffic in this light because it's something I think we could all relate to, and it's really not that big of a deal, but I think it brings up a good point. So I'm probably as guilty as anybody at times in my life. I try not to do this now, but if you've ever been driving on the freeway and somebody pulls up next to you and they put their blinker on and they want to come into your lane in front of you. Well, there's been times where I've sped up or I haven't let them in, right? And maybe it's because in that moment I'm feeling like they're trying to cut ahead, or this is unfair, or they're not valuing who I am, right? Which all may be right, accurate, but also may be completely wrong at the same time. And I think when I look in those situations where I've done this, what I've done is I've told myself that I'm more important than they are. My position in this lane is more important to me than it is to them. And in doing so, I'm making a judgment about them that is never going to be very positive. But how I end up justifying this is I don't say to myself, I didn't let that person in. What I will say is, I didn't let that car in. right? You see, when we have this inward mindset and we see ourselves as being more important than others, we have a tendency to see others as objects and to treat them as such. But when we have an outward mindset, we see others as being just as important as ourselves. When we have that mindset, we're able to see others as people and to value them as such. And so essentially the hallmark difference between an inward and an outward mindset is, are we seeing others as objects or as people? In fact, I was doing a session earlier today with sales reps. We talked about how sales reps have a tendency to see other people or their customers not as people, but as dollar signs. And that would be an example of having an inward mindset in the sales arena.
Absolutely. So what are, one of the questions you ask in the book, and I think this is a great thing to ask ourselves when we're looking at other people, is, do you think in general that people are doing the best that they can? So talk a little bit about that.
Well, that question was one of these life-changing moments for me. I think we've all had these little inflection points, and it could be something small. To me, this was one of those inflection points and it came about from Brene Brown's book, Rising Strong, which I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. I actually think her book, Rising Strong, is my least favorite, but there's one chapter in there that addresses, kind of talks about this question. It was a game changer for me, because up until that point in time in my life, I didn't necessarily think that people in general are doing the best that they can. And how that manifested for me, let me give you an example, is when I would pull up on a street corner, and I'm in Southern California. California has half of the United States homeless population. So what that means is that it's not uncommon for me to pull up on a street corner and see somebody asking for assistance. Well, when I see them as not doing the best that they can, I'm really quick to become critical of them. Right? Why are you asking me for my hard-earned money when you're just standing there? Why don't you do something more productive with your time, right? This is me seeing them as not doing their best. But after I read Brene Brown's book, and she talked about how people who see others as not doing the best that they can generally is that they struggle with shame and perfectionism. And she invites us, whether accurate or not, to see others as doing their best. And so the next time I pulled up to a street corner and saw a homeless person, I forced myself to kind of cognitively slow down and tried to see them as though they're doing their best. And as I tried to do that, a question popped in my head. And that question was, what in the world has happened in their life that has led them to believe that this is the best way to live? And this was like an epiphany moment, because I had never seen these homeless individuals in this light before. I'd always seen them as not doing their best and therefore become critical of them. In this instant, I'm now seeing them as doing their best. And then the difference is rather than being critical of them, I'm now empathetic. And now it's no longer kind of being judgmental. It's about, how can I help and support them? And to me, hopefully that's an example of how I think game changing this is that when we see others as doing their best, we're able to bring the best version of ourselves to that situation.
Yeah. And, that example made me look at it from a few different perspectives, and looking at it saying, reflecting on myself, I know my wife is more outward than I am, because naturally a lot of times I pull up to a corner and don't even notice someone outside, where she's looking for every spare change we can get. And it's something that I need to work on more.
Me too.
in the book, you also share, because it's going to be a good tie-in for the athletic part, you share a story of your experience in basketball. Can you reflect on that a little bit?
Well, if I remember the story exactly, but I think this is the mindset set that I struggle with the most. And I'll maybe even go into greater depth than what I do on my book. But growing up, when I would play team sports, while I understood maybe conceptually the idea that there's no I in team, to me, athletics was an opportunity for me to prove myself, to be seen by others. And because I saw athletics in this way, I naturally took on this inward mindset, which was, I'm more important than my teammates are. It's more important for me to score points than it is for my teammates to score points. And while I kind of conceptually knew that that wasn't the best approach, it's something that I struggled with. And so, there's different times in my athletic career where I was kind of known as the ball hawk, right? And there's certain times where I was, really bad at that. Other times where I began to be better. But to me, one of the things that's been interesting is I've been on a personal development journey myself and trying to figure out how can I shift from an inward mindset to more of an outward mindset. And what I've realized is that there's been some instances in my past, maybe some traumatic experiences that caused me to want to seek recognition through athletics, right? To be recognized. This is an opportunity for me to stand out. And so it was, for me, it's deeply ingrained to have this desire to stand out, to be recognized, to be seen. And while that feels good and while that feels right in the moment, of course, that's limiting to the people and the team around you. And it may be easier for me. It's easier said than done, partly because I've got some pretty deep ingrained wiring that I'm having to work through. But it's surely an opportunity for me to, it's recognizing and embracing that I'm not yet who I want to be and figuring out how to get there.
Right. And I was actually having a conversation with someone today about this, and sometimes it is a big life event that you go through that makes you realize where you're at on this continuum and that you need to make that change. I was on a call today with someone that was on the 78th floor of the World Trade Center when the plane hit.
Wow. And
yeah, that changed his life a lot. And, his whole focus was, Dad, can you come to my game tonight? No, I got to work. Dad, can you come on this field trip with us? A lot of dads are coming. No, I got to work. That's not how he is now. He's really changed. It's not about him anymore. It's about his family and kids. And, a lot of times that's what it is becoming aware of where your mindset is on those things.
Yeah, maybe let me try to tie a nice bow around these 4 different sets of mindsets that we talked about. So, Jeff, I'm going to give you 4 different desires. You tell me whether or not society says these are good or bad desires. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, so the desires are a desire to look good, a desire to be right, a desire to avoid problems, and a desire to get ahead. Does society say these are good or bad desires?
Society says those are all good.
Right? Because, and these are very justifiable desires, because who wants to look bad, be wrong, have problems, and get passed up?
Right.
Nobody. Right? I don't know anybody who knows that. But these desires are fueled by the negative mindsets, fix, close, prevention, and inward mindsets. And why are these desires bad? Looking good, being right, avoiding problems, and getting ahead? Well, it's because they're self-focused. When we have these negative mindsets and their associated desires, we are effectively in self-protection mode. And it's justifiable to be in self-protection mode, again, because we don't want to look bad, be wrong, have problems, and get passed up. And I think for most of my life, my adult life, I've had these desires because, and in having those desires, they felt right because I didn't want to look bad, be wrong, have problems, and get passed up. But what I've now realized, now learning about these different mindsets, is that while these desires are justifiable, there are better desires to have that are associated with the positive mindsets. So instead of having a desire to look good, I need to have a desire to learn and grow. Instead of having a desire to be right, I need to have a desire to find truth and think optimally. Instead of having a desire to avoid problems, I need to have a desire to reach goals. And instead of having a desire to get ahead, I need to have a desire to lift others. And it's not easy to get there, but kind of presenting in that way, for me, naturally, when I understood it, it's like, oh my goodness, I see where I'm at and I see where I want to go, and I want to make those shifts. I want to develop these more healthy desires. And it's not easy because, for example, if we want to learn and grow, at times we've got to be okay with looking bad. And it's just not easy to get there. And so that's part of this journey, is making these shifts from being in self-protection mode to being in what I might call contribution mode, and not focused on our protection or our success, but on the contribution that we're having on the world around us.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great way to wrap it all together. Let's talk about your assessment. Tell our listeners about the assessment. And there, just as an example, I was talking to my brother the other day, and he has to do a presentation, and I told him he needed to read this book. And I said, but if you don't have time to read the book, do the assessment, because it's going to tell you more than most books will ever tell you. So the assessment, I think it's pretty quick and relatively painless. So it's only 20 questions. There's 20 questions that are based upon or pulled from the academic measures that are used to assess these different mindsets. And so by answering these 20 questions, then it provides you with a rather deep and comprehensive report that helps you identify where the quality of your mindsets relative to 20,000 other people who have taken the mindset assessment. And then it helps you unpack, okay, what are these mindsets? And then there's some resources in terms of, okay, if there's a mindset set that I need to work on, what's the best way to go about doing that? And so it's really chock full of resources. In fact, I've gotten feedback that I give away too much in the mindset assessment. And so I'm going to be making some adjustments here in the next couple months that will change kind of its format. But for the time being, it's chock full of information. I mean, I think if you print it out, it's like 18 pages long. So it's quite a bit of content there that hopefully what it does, again, as we talked, is hopefully what it does is it helps people awaken. And when they awaken, then they can be empowered to do something about it. That's exactly it. It ties into what we were talking about at the beginning. Your mindsets drive your thinking, your learning, your behavior, which drive your success in life, work, and leadership. And so you've got to be awakened to where you are on those continuum of each of those mindset sets, so that you can get those to the right place to drive the proper thinking, learning, and behavior. So whether it's too much or not, there is so much information in there. It's so valuable. So that, along with the book, the link are going to be in the show notes. You definitely need to go through this assessment. It's really quick for the information you get out of it. It's really quick to go through. So there's so much value there.
Awesome.
Any last bit of advice, words you want to share? Anything else?
Well, maybe it's because I'm working on my next book at the moment, and at the moment I'm working on a chapter that is effectively on the connection between trauma and mindsets. And what I'm discovering is I've been doing research on the impact that trauma has on the wiring in our brain is that oftentimes when people have more of these negative mindsets, fix, close, prevention, and inward, oftentimes it's the result of a traumatic experience to some degree. And it is a form of self-protection. We are protecting ourselves from incurring, similar trauma in the future. And while it's justifiable to take on these negative mindsets in light of trauma, what we are doing when we focus on mindsets and shifting mindsets, and to me, this is the most beautiful part about focusing on mindsets, is we are healing our minds. What we're doing is we shift from, for example, fixed to growth, or closed to open, or prevention to promotion, or inward to outward. What we're doing is we're integrating, or better integrating, these neural connections such that our three major brain regions work more effectively together. So while we could talk all day long about how having more positive mindsets will lead to greater success in our life, our work, and our leadership, I think at the end of the day, what is the most beautiful to me is when I have the opportunities to help people awaken to and shift their mindsets. I feel like I'm in a position to help them heal, and that's a very meaningful perspective for me to have.
That's great. Okay, give us a lead into this. How far out are you on your next book? It's probably going to be next summer when it's launched. Almost done with the first draft. Once I get done with the first draft, the publisher, then we set a time frame. So it's hopefully next summer. Okay, awesome. I'll be waiting for it.
Cool.
Well, thank you. This has been so informative, especially, the people that listen to this. These are the things that we're interested in. Whether it's success in life, work, leadership, sports, whatever we're in, these are the things that our listeners are interested in. And this is so valuable. And so that's why I think any of you that are listening, make sure to go to the links in the notes. Number one, go through the assessment. It's going to be so much value for you. Number two, make sure to get the book. It is a great read. It's got so much great information in there. And you know what? The thing about it is, these are the things that are going to help you along your path to success. But it's also, especially if you're a parent or a teacher or a coach or any of those things, it goes far beyond you. As you awaken to these things, it's more than just what you're doing for yourself. And so that's why I think this is so important. And this work that Ryan's done is so valuable, is because it's really for a lot more than yourself. So thank you for sharing this with us. Thank you for giving us such valuable resources.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for digesting the book and the mindset assessment and your willingness to share it with others. It's really an honor to be a part of your journey, your podcast journey, and hopefully the listeners' journey as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
I'm looking for entrepreneurs, athletes, coaches, and other high achievers who want to discover their full potential. Those that have dreams and desires of getting to the next level and just need to figure out how to get there. Hi, my name is Jeff Heggie. I'm a success coach, and I want to show you the truth about developing a powerful mindset. One of the biggest things holding people back from achieving their dreams is their own limiting beliefs. And the bad thing about limiting beliefs is they prevent you from discovering your true potential and cause you to settle for way less than you really deserve. I've seen this time and again in business, athletics, all areas of life. And worst of all, many people never get past the idea that achieving their biggest dreams in life is just that, a dream. But luckily, now there's a solution for this problem. So if you're an entrepreneur, athlete, coach, or other high achiever that really wants to get to the next level, but it just hasn't happened yet, here's the solution you've been looking for. I want to introduce you to High Achievers Mindset Secrets. High Achievers Mindset Secrets is designed to help you gain control of your future, become absolutely clear on your goals and how you're going to achieve them, discover the true potential of what you have within yourself, and live every day with confidence. Intentionally live the life you desire, and much, much more. From day one, you'll be able to start implementing the strategies that will bring results into your life. High Achievers Mindset Secrets is designed specifically to meet your needs, and there's 3 options for you to choose from. First of all, there's the 6-module course. Over the course of these 6 modules, you'll learn the momentum cycle, the success cycle, and how to make them work in your favor. How to build confidence and self-belief. You'll learn to create clear goals, understand what you need to do to achieve them, and most importantly, you'll discover your why for each one. And I'll tell you now, it's not what you think. You'll learn the power of mindset questions, visualization, and having a vivid vision. You'll learn the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset and how you can change it. You'll understand the importance of proximity as power. You'll create personal development habits that lead to success. And you'll create your own personal success formula. You'll also learn the connection of mindset and mental health, the importance of state, modeling, and mindfulness, and so much more. The second option is the Academy. In the Academy, you get the full 6-module course, plus some specific, specialized one-on-one coaching. In the team program, it's designed for athletic teams, sales teams, executive teams, any team that wants to maximize its potential. Each person on the team will go through the 6-module course, and then there'll be some group coaching specifically with me. So again, if you're an entrepreneur, athlete, coach, or any other high achiever that really wants to get to the next level and you're committed to making it happen, you know every day counts. You deserve to be living the life that you want on your rules. You deserve to achieve those dreams, start that business, win that championship, get recruited, whatever that is that you desire. There's never been a better time in history to make a change and take charge of your future. You work hard, you want it bad, you're committed to making it happen. Let's do it now. So get on board with the High Achievers Mindset Secrets, because I look forward to working with you.
Get more details at mindset.jeffheggie.com.